I'm Isabel. I'm leading the Venture Builder team at EPFL, our incubator services for startups coming out of our labs. And it's my pleasure to host this session today to talk about Swiss med tech, but with global ambition. So we know, like, if we look at 2024, last year, in terms of startup investment in Switzerland, HealthTech, which includes medtech and biotech, was the largest portion of it. And we know that as Switzerland, medical technology is something core to our environment, and we have great potential. I mean, we have EPFL, we have ETH, we have great universities, we have strong university hospitals, we have top infrastructure as well. And at the same time, we all know that it's probably one of the spaces which is the longest route to market, filled with challenges as well. Because beyond the technology, it's about the clinicians, it's about the adoption, it's about the regulatory path. So today, I'm very fortunate because we have two guest speakers who are at a very different stage and who will be able to provide a very different view. So I'm very thankful to having you both here. Atatuna, former CEO, founder, CEO of Lunaphore. You took it all the way from the EPFL lab to the market growth to the exit. So big congratulations for that. Lunaphore, as you probably most of you know, develops rapid automated tissue diagnostic, and it's really transformed the way we analyze tumors today. Thank you very much for being here. And then we have Maxime Nachit, who is at an earlier stage. So Epavu just come out of the labs from EPFL at the beginning. You are a former physician turned researcher turned founder. So lots of different views as well to show us about your path. And Epavu is developing a virtual liver biopsy. So really moving away from the way we actually do liver biopsy to using imaging to transform the way we work on this today. So thank you very much to both of you for being here.
Thank you.
So let's start from the beginning, maybe, and I'll start with you, Maxime, because you're just out of the lab. What, in terms of, I talked before, I said Switzerland has the infrastructure, what support have you had, which is important? And then I know you're also very connected to the ecosystem in Europe. What have you seen in other ecosystems that maybe we could also think about at those very early stages for medical device?
Sure. So, thanks very much for the invitation. I believe the critical thing that we found in Switzerland and EPFL is really that pre-seed funding, because it's very difficult and somehow it's a bit weird that to find the first 20K, 100K, it's much more difficult than to find the rest. I mean, when you talk about the seed round. And so in our case, what was, I would say, life-changing was the Inno grant from EPFL. So it's basically 1 year of salary, and that where you have full freedom, which is exactly what you need. You know, there is a lot of grants where you have to participate to things, to pitch to whatever, to give report, etc. You have only 24 hours in a day, and that's really something you don't want to do. And so those first 100K were very, very important for us because it allowed us to basically not jump on the first occasion, to explore different VC ecosystems. So we could go in Switzerland, we could go in Holland, in Germany, in Belgium, in France, and we could basically, I wouldn't say be picky. That's a luxury that doesn't exist, at least for my experience in the last years. But at least you could not say yes to anything. And so that was critical. We also had the FIT loan, which is a loan from the Canton de Vaud. And that basically helped us support our salaries, pay for the lawyers. That's something that you underestimate. But as a biotech, you need IP. In our case, we need IP in different countries. I mean, the lawyer's expense is 50K, 60K, 70K. So when you put that, the cost of incorporation, which is 20K, plus the need to live, and we were two co-founders, my associate Gabi, which is in the room. I mean, you need 100K, 150K to even start. And biotech, you cannot start in your garage. I mean, you cannot start coding or whatever. You need bioreactors that cost a lot. And so that was very helpful. And then to answer your second question, what was missing is the next step. So once you have that start, you have everything in place, you have your team, you have the license, you have the company incorporated, Then in biotech, you need millions to start. And the problem was we could not find that in Switzerland. So we probed basically all VCs, hundreds of them. We made big list. We were not very successful at that. But the good point was that we had freedom to go in other places in Europe. So I was traveling every week, basically, going to pitch, going to try to find someone. And then we found, I would say, a perfect match for us, which honestly, I mean, I could have not dreamed to find these kind of investors and also their associates. And then that funding, in the end, we found it in Belgium and in France. So that's what we did not find in Switzerland for the seed. Maybe we find for Series A, I don't know. But that was probably something a bit disappointing, is that you have everything to start. So of course you want to start here, and that's what people want. You create job in Switzerland, etc., which you try. But in the end, you spend 1 year basically, which we don't found. So
thank you. But congratulations that you found. Atta, from your side, and I know it's further away, but maybe more looking at it from the Swissness. What happened? I mean, EPFL is very recognized in Switzerland, but what happens when you're going abroad, Europe, and in your case especially, I know you started very, very fast with the US. What happens? Well, is our brand known? Is it a door opener or not?
I usually think in terms of the credibility space and the credibility network. When you're out of EPFL, you have a technology. If your professor is also well known with a couple of other spinouts, it is relatively easy to go over this credibility hump when you're speaking with investors. And my experience was a little bit different than Maxim's in terms of pre-seed and seed financing. Until Series B, actually, we exploited that very much, and then we had all the credibility so that the investors, take us quite seriously, and then they would believe that we have this technology and we will be able to develop a product like this. Most of the time in the diligences, it was not a question if we will be able to do it. People actually assume that you're able to do that. It's the same when you go speak with potential buyers, because in this field, it is also a lot goes through the credibility, because doctors are very busy, or your buyers are pharma companies and so on. They're very busy, and then there's so many door knockers on their door asking them to try what they're selling. Many people are not even willing to try, right? But if you're coming with certain credibility and you have your network, if I go to LinkedIn, I could find somebody who would know a customer in Switzerland or in the closed environment. That credibility works very well. But when we hit to the US, actually, it is completely the other way around. Nobody knows you. There are some people who heard of EPFL, but within at least the investment environment or the customers that we're speaking to, somehow yes or not. You don't have any network that people would know you and then we would tell, oh, I work with them, so you can work with them. So that is something you have to build from scratch. You can talk about Swiss-made and so on, but it really didn't work that way. And it's the same for almost every country or ecosystem. It's easier for neighboring countries, right? If you go to Germany, if you go to France, if you go to Italy, that is relatively easy. But in the US, you have to build it from scratch. And it takes time. First and foremost, and it's expensive. So you have to do a lot of PR, you have to be present in almost all the conferences, you have to start getting certain KOLs on your side so that they speak on your behalf. So I would say we had a pre-investment of about 2 years of going to conferences, speaking to KOLs, making trials, bringing data, but be present in every key meeting there. And after a while, our credibility started jumping, and this is where a little bit we could also start selling. So it's extremely important that entrepreneurs keep that in mind when you're internationalizing. You have to first build the credibility, and it is more planning ahead, and after a while, it's also a lot of money to be able to finance that for a while. But at the beginning, it is really more thinking about it, going to the right place, speaking with the right people.
Excellent. Thank you.
And hiring the correct people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. To build that credibility, you're
absolutely.
Right. We talk about the beginning of the credibility. Credibility also comes a lot with clinician validation, right? You guys, I mean, you have the background, but at EPFL, we often perceived as we know how to solve the technical problem, but is that going to actually be useful for a clinician? How early do you involve clinicians? Is it too early? Is it too late? And how important is having that validation along the way?
In our case, very early, obviously. But even if you have the background, there is a lot of field in medicine. Medicine is very large. And so what we tend to often see is you have a lot of tools that would answer a lot of questions, but in the end, a lot of people are not concerned about the so what. In the clinics, you say, okay, I can do that, even if your model does it perfectly. If the clinician has nothing to do with that disease, so what? And I feel that a lot of things are being started in the lab. Say, oh, it would sound cool to make a predictive thing for that or an imaging tool for this or whatever. Then you develop it, and then you try to push it to clinicians. And then you have resistance, but not resistance because your tool is not working, but because it might not solve a problem. And so in our case, what we did is to go very early to clinician and to say, we don't have our final product yet. Obviously, we are at the beginning. We're going to start clinical trials soon. But to say, okay, if I'm able to solve that and to tell you exactly that with perfect accuracy, would that help you, And basically, in a lot of cases, it was yes, but also in a lot of cases, it was no. And so that helped us basically focus on the indication where even before starting a phase 1, we know that if we solve that, that would be useful. And again, only future will tell us if it was a good strategy. But I believe it's essential. And it's not like a lot of product where you can imagine yourself using it. Anything, large language models, whatever, everyone uses it, whatever you feel. But in medicine, a lot of people have misconception about what is a real problem. And to the clinician, which is in the end the guy or the person that will order your test, if he can do nothing about it, and I put aside the cost and everything, let's say it's there, it's available even for free. If he can do nothing about it, it will not use it. So I believe it's really essential.
And Atta, from your perspective, you talked about credibility. I know that you had strong links with the University Hospital of Lausanne from the beginning. But on your team, you were all EPFL. Was that perceived as, from your side, was that perceived as something that you were missing because you didn't have someone with a clinical background, or on the contrary, just having the network and building the credibility was enough? And that's probably not right or wrong answer, but
no, I mean, I can tell you what. How we build this, and then maybe the realities of Lunaphore, because it's a bit interconnected. So for Lunaphore was a pure engineering play from a technology perspective, right? We were integrating microfluidics, electronics, optics, automation technology. It was actually quite engineering intensive, where your customers are life science or like pharma companies, or hospitals or the labs, I would say clearly. So I think what is really important is to have in the loop whoever your customer definition is. Sometimes it's clinician, sometimes it's lab. If it's a lab, it's usually the doctor who is running the lab, or sometimes there's another person who is running the lab and how they make the decisions, and so on. So that you develop a product that solves their problems. And then the way that we approach to this is we basically didn't try to agree on a solution with the customer, hey, like this is what we can do, but what do you say? They're like a bit, as Maxim says, like, so what? We were like, okay, what is your problem? And we try to make them agree on the problem, and then we go with our engineering solution to be able to match that. So from that perspective, actually, we never had, to a certain level, issues at the early stages. Now, when we come to the late stages, it's a whole another game, because your buyers are minimum PhDs, most of the time professors. And even like I had my PhD, like once we started the company and went until the product, it was 7-8 years. The field has changed so much. I was unable to follow the conversations. Usually I was bringing my CTO. Eventually we set up a team, what we call the scientific affairs. And we hired a person who was an assistant professor. He left his professor position, come to Lunaphore to lead that team, and then hired like a couple of PhDs, like immuno-oncologists and oncologist PhDs, so that we make that conversations with the end users through them, not us anymore. But that was more like almost a half sales, but it brought us so much credibility because they knew how those people were wanted to be approached. They speak their language. They had the jargon. They could pull out a paper to show that, hey, have you seen this paper? I mean, I spoke to investors for 5-6 years. I didn't follow anymore the latest papers. It was impossible for us to do that. So that is the way that we built that credibility, let's say, window that opens towards the customers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe a follow-up question on that, because it's often something I see in medtech. Is there a difference between the user and and the decision maker who buys it? Because sometimes we hear this.
Yeah.
The doctor might think it's great, but you know what? The procurement team in the hospital, if they're not into it, it's not necessarily going to happen. How do you manage your two stakeholders there? Is it, for you, it was maybe research, but we hear that a lot from startups, that it's not that straightforward because you focus on the end user and that person may or may not be the decision taker.
Can I go ahead?
Sure.
I mean, it was similar in the sense that our users were sometimes PhD students, if it's an academic customer, if it's a pharma or large cancer research center, it's the technician who is using it. But your decision maker is somebody else. And then that decision maker also has the procurement team. I mean, what we were selling was average $500,000 per sale. So it is not like somebody will be able to just sign by himself most of the time. I mean, that is, again, the salespeople, or at least the sales support that we had, were able to speak the procurement language and the scientific language at the same time. Okay. And it's a whole another game, but this is how we did it. And after a while, we started making documentation about what the procurement is looking for, in a way that we change all our marketing material, all our supporting material, that would open 80% of those doors without having too much need from the salespeople. Otherwise, you cannot scale, because the problem is, when you're selling something like this, everybody sends their contract to you. And we're like, no, you cannot just negotiate a new contract out of for every customer.
Okay. So
and that is a little bit the approach. At the beginning, of course, as the founder, you have to learn and understand what's going on until you have all these people and you can finance this. But that is also part of the game. You go into the, let's say, unbeaten track. You put the things a little bit into place, and then you invite others in a way that they can continue what you started, but they will do much better than you, but they're not always starters, right?
I hear you.
In our case, it's a bit different in the sense that what we are putting on the market is considered as a drug. So basically, it's a radio tracer. And so the people that will pay is depending on the ecosystem. In Europe, in general, is the government. In US, can be private insurance companies. And what you need, so there's two things you need to do. First is convince the medical field, and that starts with the guidelines. You need to know who is writing the guidelines, who is deciding that marker, that test is better than this one, and where should we put it. So I think you should start to engage very early with those key opinion leaders, especially in your clinical trials. And then the second thing is who pays. So as I mentioned, why would they pay for something? They pay for something if they can reduce cost on other things. And so in our case, it's a diagnostic test. So what we have to demonstrate is, look, first, my diagnostics test is superior to what is available. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, if you use it, that will cost you that much. If you use it on 100 patients, that would cost you that much. But if because of it, you prevent one patient, in our case, it's liver disease, to go to transplantation, then you will spare that much. And basically, you have to run those cost-efficient analysis. And so, yeah, to summarize the two things is to first convince the physician that they're going to use it, and Second, the payers. And in the US, there's something particular called the pass-through. And pass-through in our case means that you have a very high reimbursement in the first 3 years. And now they're even talking of extending that, meaning it's not so much the price of what you develop that is important, but it's how much it's going to spare to the whole system. And you can compute that in terms of who is going to the hospital, the quality of life lost, whether this patient, they are more likely to not work and stop working and be on the Medicare or whatever coverage there is. And so that's what you need to demonstrate from my understanding.
Yeah. So focus on the end user, but never forget the full ecosystem of decision makers.
We were calling this a business case because like hospitals are a business, right? They get money from reimbursement and then they distribute that money to different parts, diagnostics, doctors. In our case, it's the labs. It is very similar. So we were always like this procurement part, we were coming with a business case for the customer so that they can understand they won't spend time to do it for you. You have to really go together with your business case and your like USPs, combine that. It's a much better product, and then this is the business case. And then for every business, it's a little bit different.
But then it's really adapting to their language. Like you say, when you're talking to the clinicians, to the end users, it might be one language. When you're looking at the decision makers, it's going to be very much the business case at the end and the economics around it. That's a driver. Perfect. Well, you've touched a bit on going to the US, right? But I know you told me before about that path, that 3-year path. Is that your key driver today? I mean, you're starting, you're actually pre-market, you're signing your first round, but you're already working on your FDA engagement.
So the idea is that in our case, so the tracers, so there's not more patient in the US, but the reimbursement is like 10 times. So, I mean, obviously, from a market perspective, that's it's a country you have to engage with, and whatever the change are going to come, we have to adapt. So that's one thing. The second thing, and that's something we learned hopefully early, a lot of protection around your product are from the regulatory perspective. Meaning, if you have, in our case, a biological license application, if you are the reference product, meaning the first product on the market with this, you have 12 years exclusivity on the market. And during the first 4 years, nobody can even submit their BLA. And if they do, then there is something called the patent dance, where you get to know the patent of your competitors, and there is a lot of things that can happen. And that's something that we were not aware of, but this is one of the reasons. There is kind of similar mechanism in Europe, but it's much less profitable, I would say, because just the price of the reimbursement. And the second thing is also, this time from an IP perspective. So given that it takes a long time to put the drug on the market, there is something called patent term extension. There is the same thing in Europe, where you can have 5 years maximum addition to your patent, which is something we knew from the beginning. What we did not know, however, is that that doesn't count retrospectively. So the timer starts where you submit your IND, so it's your investigation on new drug filing, so basically your mouse data, the timer starts there. Meaning that, let's say you go in phase 2 in the US, which is most of the case what we do in biotech in Europe, at least. You start phase 1, 2 here, and then phase 3, you include a US center. But if you start to think about that when you're in phase 3, you have lost all the development years that could have extended your patent, which is, again, something we learned quite recently. And so that's another reason to engage with the FDA. So aside from the economic perspective, there is protective incentive, IP and regulatory protection that are, by the way, you can combine them. Then you have a, if you manage to be the first with your product, so the first in class, you have a very comfortable position. But for that, you need to engage very early.
Okay, that's good to know. Good tip.
Well.
Very good. And for you, you've often talked about the cycles, the sales cycles, just a different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this from a life science tools and diagnostics perspective, which is a little bit different. But eventually, what we have seen is in the US, your sales cycles are counted in weeks. In Europe, years, also in Switzerland. And then imagine you're a startup. Like when we launched our product, we raised like 50 million until that moment. And then just before that, we raised another 20 or so. like you need to grow, and then you start speaking to the customers, and you see that it's going slow. It's like so it's like 2 years or so. But when we started like hitting to the US market, people are much more receptive to new technologies. That's for sure. They have their own spare budgets if they want to really go fast, but also they can clear budgets faster. Their decision-making systems are much more clear. You can, navigate through it. And most of the time, you don't have tenders. Which, there had been one extreme case. We waited 18 months for an opening of a tender in Italy and another 18 months until it's closed. So you cannot survive as a startup with your burn rate and so on in this environment.
Right.
So the thing, the way to go, we quickly figured out, as many people did, investors are asking you to the initial very fast growth, right? And then that is the only way is US to get there. But Europe, you have to put a lot of seeds. They're going to come out mature very late. But once they start maturing, it starts becoming a much more stable business than the US. Because in the US, on the other side, we have seen quarters of 8 million, and then next quarter is 1 million, because everybody wants to buy, and then suddenly something happens, people pause there, stock market goes down in the biotechs pause their budgets, and then suddenly you're on the bottom, so you have to a little bit survive this. But this is the dual strategy that almost I think everybody has to follow, and I think it even goes beyond life science tools and medtech. It goes to many deep tech companies who have big hardware components to sell. And Donald Trump was bragging about them financing all the drugs and the innovation in the life sciences. To a certain extent, he's right, because if that market pool is not there, many of the startups new technologies, it's hard to survive 2-3 years until you finish your product and somebody eventually starts buying it.
You're right.
Right, and then we a little bit see how it goes, and if it's a good product and everybody starts buying here, you cannot convince, for example, the key opinion leaders here to buy your product, but when they see it in the US and the other people are buying, and then they start buying it. So we sold our first instrument in Switzerland after 2 years of product launch, compared to our first sales in the US.
In the US.
Yeah.
And talking about your
with all the credibility that we were
all
talking
the credibility
about.
you already
exactly.
had. And going back to you just talked about your product launch, and I want to touch on this with you because it's true. Luna 4 success story, 10 years, you made it, and we look at but I know that you had that huge pivotal moment, which was actually not that early in the journey. I mean, early-ish, but you had already gone quite a bit. And we were talking about customer validation. And even with all that customer validation, you had a moment where you realized you need to change.
Yeah, we made a big mistake from the beginning. And it was, I always call it first-time entrepreneur mistake for myself. We had this great technology. We could have a lot of added medical value with this. So we decided to make an IBD instrument, an IBD strategy, which is diagnostic, to make it available in the clinic. And that was really my worst decision I have ever taken. Because at the beginning, it is easier to make people finance that. When you say IBD, there are reimbursement codes already existing and so on. It looks great. But when we actually launched the product, we validated it, we CE-marked it, we started selling, and that was the moment, that was the aha moment for me. The problem is, it is slow, as I said, to sell to the hospitals. They are extremely cost sensitive, as we discussed before, versus your pharma doesn't care about the cost. Tell me what you can do for me, and then whatever the price that you give them, if it matches the competition, of course, they're okay to pay. They're not cost sensitive at all. And then, like, it is really hard to grow a company selling an instrument that is in the between 50 to, that's around 20 to 50K, and then wait the clinicians to adapt your testing. And I have seen, okay, we are going to die like this. So we decided to make a pivot to research business, pharma, large cancer research centers, because we have seen immuno-oncology research market was actually like 5 times to 10 times higher than the diagnostic market we are going after. Yes, it doesn't have a reimbursement code, but all this money is raised. People are like throwing money at it and so on. But the problem is, like, we had to redo the product. And then we went back to the investors who actually just invested for this product launch, and we said we have to pivot. But I think the good part with that is when you need to do such a serious talk, you come with real-world evidence. Like, we spoke with almost all the pharma company on the earth. We spoke with almost all the major cancer research centers. We made them under, like, we even, I invested some of the money to make a professional market survey. So it was so clear, like, if we repackage our product and then make it fit into what researchers are looking for, it's going to be a big takeoff. And then what we did is actually we made a prototype of that product. It was really like back to the roots prototype. We tried selling prototypes, and then we sold 10 prototypes by telling them, guys, this is a prototype. We are going to bring you back like your real thing in 2 years. But for the moment, you want this. And when people start saying yes, we said, okay, this is the correct way to go. And then that was a big convincing point. And this is how we also raised our Series D and so on. Yeah. Actually, we continued selling that prototype up to 30, 40 customers. And then later it created a problem. We had to like re-change all of that install base. But yeah, that is the pivot story.
That's sorry. And you said it's first-time entrepreneur, so it means we are looking forward to hearing your next adventure.
Why I'm saying that is, I either saw a post or it was in a talk. Somebody said that like, first-time entrepreneurs think about technologies, products, like what they can do. Second-time entrepreneurs immediately think about like who I can sell, what is the problem, who are the customers. Even like they don't even care about the product. It's exactly this. And now sometimes I go to advise some other companies. I don't even ask about their product. Guys, who is your customer? What is the problem you're solving? Define me your customer. And then we will find a way, to put your solution. But let's agree on like what you're doing and if there's a need for that, right? So, and that was my own personal pivot story where I had my second entrepreneur hat, let's say, second-time entrepreneur hat.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm just looking at the time. So maybe I ask you, Maxime, directly a little bit. I mean, AI, everything's about AI. Startups tell us, if I don't have AI on my pitch deck, I'm dead, because people are looking for AI. You're doing image analysis, but to you today, going back to, do clinicians want this? How are they going to use it? What is the role of AI today? And you've just finished a round. How much is it important for you to put it forward in a medical health tech environment?
The short answer is 0. Like we basically completely remove any reference to AI in our pitch, and that was the best decision. So it's kind of for very early pivot as well in terms of pitch. Is that because basically we have a product, as I mentioned, that is falling under the drug regulation, so that's purely biotech. But then that product, so it's a radio tracer agent, you do imaging. And to analyze the image, then it's software, so it's medtech. And so at the beginning, we were pitching, and they were like, yeah, but are you biotech? Are you medtech? And then, given the amount we were needing, if we were medtech, they say, it's way too high. And if it's biotech, they were saying the complete opposite is way too low. And so in the end, we chose to go with the biotech, basically, because first, it's more understood in terms of reimbursement, stuff like that. Second, the regulation for AI, it's changing. You just look at the 2027 AI regulation for a medical device, might be considered the highest risk. So do you really want to put a lot of AI in there? So that's the second thing. And the third thing, and I might have a quite a harsh view on that, but a lot of people think that AI is not going to the clinics because clinicians don't like it. They use AI for 20 years, 30 years with computer-assisted diagnosis, for example, in the imaging field. Yeah, it's just that the tools that we have now are not convincing. So we can say whatever, you can look whatever pitch. In real-life clinical use, it has been a total disappointment for most of the AI use cases in the clinics. And so that's probably not true in many other fields, but in the clinics at least, that doesn't bring any value most of the time. And so one area where it brings value is imaging, because then you can do dose segmentation, meaning you delineate automatically organ. And for having been in a radiology workflow for a few years, I can tell you radiologist hates to do that. They just do simple round on the image, and that's it for a long, long time. So that brings value, but we're not even sure yet that in our case it will. And so basically what we're doing now is we work on AI. We do have some AI tools. We will test them in clinical trials. If they don't bring any value, we will not use them. If they do, we are even considering putting them open source, for example, because and then you don't have to be naive from a business point of view. When you compare, as Atta was mentioning, the pharma reimbursement compared to whatever software, I mean, it's probably 99% to 1% in terms of revenue. So in our case, at least, we started doing that. So we're starting advertising as AI company, I mean, AI and biotech, and then we noticed it created a lot of confusion. So we simply avoided that. And so in our investors now, we did not even value the AI tool we have. We mostly didn't talk about it, I would say. But we're working on it, and maybe it will be the cherry on top. Maybe it will not be useful. We'll see.
So not yet.
Not yet. No,
Okay, I'm looking at the time. We have two different experiences here.
You want an AI feedback, or we are out of time?
Give quick AI feedback from your perspective.
From my perspective, I think we
now
have to split it down. There are LLMs, which is different than like big data companies, which is different than computational biology. And these are everybody is saying AI, but these are completely different. I think LLMs are extremely helpful in automating the workflows in the hospitals, because there's so much manual workflow documentation between nurses and the doctors and so on. But that is basically application of LLMs. The second is the data. And then this is what Maxim was saying, there's a lot of imaging data, there's a lot of different kind of data, but that data started to become so multimodal, humans are unable to interpret it under certain, we can teach AI, okay, this is your endpoint, and then you can annotate your data and so on in a way that they can find what we're looking for. But there, the problem is the data quality. It is not the technology of machine learning that we have. That technology is there. We don't have that data quality. Whoever solves that is going to be the answer. On the third one, it's a moonshot, computational biology. It's a whole another game. And then maybe this is let's say, only new AI coming into the game that is going to, it's a moonshot. Either if we can do it, it's amazing, but it is going to take probably 20, 30 years based on my experience. But, well, I didn't do that. I'm not an AI expert, so maybe there are entrepreneurs here. Those guys would know better than me. But these three are completely different things, and we have to really not just say AI for medtech or LLM, big data, or computational.
You're right. Making that difference as too much of a generic term.
Yeah.
Before I open real quick to questions, because you're at a very different stage, I just wanted to kind of ask you, what do you envy about each other's position today?
You want to start or start?
Yeah. The biggest thing I miss, and then I think without that, it is also hard to start a company or build something, is the naivety that I had.
You want to be you before AHA.
It sounds conflicting. It sounds conflicting, but it is when you start your company and when you're also a first-timer, that you so much believe in what you're doing, and that belief makes you actually bring it to the life, while everybody say, oh, this is not going to work, blah, 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 we are not going to invest. And then I somehow lost that, right? I think it's going to be a little bit like very difficult for me to have it again, to do something that is completely out of the box. I think this is the biggest thing I miss. And also early start days with my co-founders, we had amazing time together. As you know more, things are getting more professional and everybody starts working on their own silo. Yeah, these two I'm really missing a lot. Yeah, and I think I won't be able to have it again.
Who knows? Maxime?
Yeah, I mean, I try to not envy, other people in general. But what I would say is I very like the position I'm in now. And as Atta just mentioned, we have a very good team. Of course, it's not pink every day in our lives, but we are enjoying. We feel that we are at our place, I would say, in what we're doing. Maybe his nights are better than mine. That's probably for sure, but I assume that's the price you have to pay. And I think I understand your part about naivety. I already lost kind of some.
It's a bad thing.
No, I agree.
Thing,
but if you know what's coming for you, even if you read whatever TEDx talk, whatever pitches, until you experience it, you have no idea. Really, you have no idea. And then I assume if you do it again, then you know what's coming from, but you also have the solution. But we have to figure them out on the spot. Yeah. So,
but you also have biases. You start thinking, this is not going to work because of this. Yeah. But maybe if you do it, it may.
Indeed, indeed. So maybe his nights to answer shortly.
The nights. Excellent. Thank you so much for both of you for your talks and from your very candid perspectives. Sure. We have maybe time for a couple of questions. I know we run a tiny bit over, but we started late, so. Are there any specific questions to the panel? No.
All right. No, please. Please. I don't know, whoever you would like to add.
Thank you.
If I understood you right, you said the mistake you've made was to validate the device before you sell it. And the solution was to sell prototypes.
No, the mistake that I did was assuming from the beginning without thinking it truly and making also looking at different optionalities, IVD is the way to go. And then we have never questioned this until that moment, while we had a market sitting next to us, which was faster, better, much better financed, where we could also bring a very good product with the same technology, similar product. That was our mistake. We were so blind and just going towards that direction.
Then I didn't understand how you can sell prototypes that are actually helpful. As you said, the problem with AI in medtech or computational is that it helps for assistance. You can use it as assistance because otherwise it needs validation.
So in research, this is exactly what I am. So IVD versus research market. Research market is not regulated. As long as you can convince customer to buy, you can sell whatever. You need some CE marking in a way that it's not going to kill people or harm people, like electrical compliance. I'm taking those out, but you don't need to demonstrate performance formally. Versus what Maxime was talking about is he's talking about the clinical environment, and there anything used has to. So you cannot sell prototypes there. You need to have your whatever certification you need for the claims that you're putting forward. From low risk to high risk, there's a different set of things.
Okay, thank you.
Make it clear? Yeah. Please.
Hi, my name is Isabella. I work for an accelerator connected with ETH and University of Zurich. My question is more towards you as a founder. What kind of tips would you give to somebody who, like me, for example, is trying to support startups, who has founders who are mainly scientists, that science is not the only thing that counts? Because, I mean, one of the challenges that we are facing mostly is that people who have a PhD and then they are embarking in this entrepreneurial journey, they think that there's the solution, the technology itself will solve any problems and will open any doors. But to make a startup successful is not the only thing you need to have. So, I mean, sometimes it's very challenging to have our voice heard from those founders. So what kind of tips would you give me to support them better? And to have them understand that, of course, there is much more than some.
All right. Excellent.
Yeah.
You're a bit more closer,
Okay.
but I will answer as well.
Sure. I would say two things. The first one is simply read. There is a lot of books out there that I zero financial education, and basically there are 3, 4, 5 books. If you read them, you get to understand exactly how a fundraising works. How can you get screwed by investors? From the legal perspective as well, from the IP perspective as well, because maybe that's one of the problems. A lot of people want to file a patent, but then they have no idea what it means to file a patent, what is a granted patent, is it a defensive patent, is it so that's the first thing. And the second thing that unlocked, I would say pretty much everything for us, was to get into contact with previous entrepreneurs. So previous entrepreneur that is more or less the same thing than you do, so that will share a lot of the experience that you will need, not everything obviously, because otherwise you will not be novel. That was the thing that unlocked all the rest. The funding, the strategy, in which order should you do things, the mistake they did, as I just mentioned, and they tell you, okay, I'm not telling you everything, but this don't do. So it's the two things, to read and to surround yourself with previous entrepreneurs. Ideally that have a science background so that they would understand what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say a little bit the same. If I were you, I would create a system where, like, you can meet people in similar businesses, but who started 3, 4 years ago, in a way that, like, you keep this feedback loop. That makes a huge difference. And I think there's also the other part. Investors, I completely agree. Many people go out raise money, raise money, but the problem is, like, they don't understand what are kind of the businesses that VCs are funding, what are kind of the businesses family offices are looking for, what are the business angels are looking for, and they're all looking for different things. And then if you're, like, blind to this, you go out to try speaking with people actually who will never fund you because it's not their business model. Like, somebody has to tell them, like, hey, like, this investor is for this, that investor is for that, and then sometimes it's not investable, so they have to maybe find a way to keep the lights on early on until they build whatever they need. This is number one. Number two is, I think a big realization when you go through all the stages is, like, what you do is, like, okay, there's a product out there in the market, and I have a technology like this, and you're like, this is going to sell like hell. People are paying to the other, like whatever it is, and it is not even as good as 10% of what I'm doing, which is correct. But the success is also having the correct channels, how to bring that product to the customer. And this is why, like, there's tons of shitty products in very good channels in terms of sales and marketing execution. It's a multiplier, right? So it multiplies this bad product, but it multiplies it. And then because as an entrepreneur you don't know, and then you don't have those channels, you basically multiply your great thing by 0. So from day one, these two start building this like next to each other. Many people go into the trap that I build this great product first, and then it will sell itself. No, and then this is where people get really bankrupt. It's hard to get money. So you have to start building both of them accordingly in a vision that combines it. And then, like, if you really put them in touch with people who've done that, they will easily understand, yes, that is the way to go. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ooh. Are we okay?
Do we have another talk here?
3 more minutes? Okay.
Hi, Atta. I just have a quick question.
Yes.
Do you invest at all in early stage tech?
I am trying to learn to be an investor.
You're still a naive investor then.
Yeah, I am.
Perfect. Can we talk to you after?
So I would like to do it. I just don't want to take people's time because I am also still learning. Of course, I'm happy to engage, but it's all another game. And I am more advising right now rather than investing, but happy if there's anything that, like, really super matches, then I can understand like this, yes, probably I will do. But I cannot tell that I'm regularly doing it.
Okay, thank you.
It's just staying there to find the correct structure.
Sorry.
I heard you have learned a lot about marketing. Quick question, did you work together with the advertising agency?
We built our own PR and marketing at Lunaphore. It was so important. And then marketing is the number one value driver of what you do. So like from the beginning, we were 3 co-founders. One's job was marketing and the customer relations. Even we didn't have anything. And then I think that made a huge difference compared to many other companies out there. Because more people know you, more valuable your company is. That's the point.
Last question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Please. Yeah.
What is the best strategy to get the medical data that we need for training and improving of AI models?
I think it depends what kind of medical data you're referring to. If you're talking about patient data like biological things, first it depends, is it already available or do you need to run another test on it? Second, if you're talking about imaging, there is a lot of imaging that is available, a lot of medical data available to any researcher. For example, UK Biobank, you have 500,000 individuals over there where you have imaging, where you have biological data, where you have events. So there is all of us in the US. So you have those places where you have huge access to data. And the way I would approach it is to train whatever you're trying to train maybe on these cohorts and then contact a local hospital. Because in the local hospital, if you need images, I mean, anywhere you go in any hospital, they have it. Same for biological data, for example, to try to validate what you're doing.
Okay,
So, yeah.
Yes, the data are available for research.
Yeah.
Is it possible to use for commercial scope? Piece of training of AI?
Actually, it's a pharma company that maybe we can have that.
Yeah, maybe because I'm conscious of other people. Maybe you guys can stay offline for that. Sorry, just I know we were a little bit over late, but just to make sure. Thank you, thank you. Just a picture. Okay.